Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say, I'm watching so-and-so show. And then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it. And that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episode 3 of the Paramount Plus series, Lawmen, Bass Reeves. So listen, I know I may have been coming off a little curmudgeonly lately with my recent reviews of Lessons in Chemistry and the most recent episode of Invincible, but am I way off base by saying this episode was boring as fuck? Whenever I'm generally, and here's the thing, whenever I'm generally negative about several consecutive but different films or television shows, I try to take a step back and look at myself as the problem. A lot of people don't do that. I look at myself. I'm like, are you just in a shitty mood so you're more prone to being negative, or were you just hit with the misfortune of watching 3 shitty things in a row? I don't know. But I'm serious about that. Like, if I have a negative opinion on I say about three straight consecutive things, I do look at myself like, okay, maybe you're in the wrong place. So I know how I am, and I don't want to get up here and say some shit I'm gonna regret. I don't want to get up here and say like rag on a show and then watch it again later and realize I was tripping. So I watched this episode a second time. That's why this video is late. I could have gotten it up Monday, but I wanted to watch the episode again because, like I said, I didn't trust myself to be negative about 3 consecutive things. I figured, I was like, you must have just been in a mood, my guy. Like, it can't be that bad. But no, after a second watch, this episode was still boring as fuck. So let's get into it. I'll also have some more pissy commentary in the thought section at the end, so stick around for that. It's going to be a lot more measured here when we're talking about the episode, but the thought section is going to be a little messy. So in the opening scene here, we learn that Bass's wife is about to give birth, and it's his first day at the new job as the U.S. Deputy Marshal, as a U.S. Deputy Marshal. And then heads off to meet Judge Parker, played by the legendary Donald Sutherland, to be sworn in. Now, before I continue, is it me or did Donald Sutherland look extra frail to you guys now? Like, he's only shown sitting down, and you could tell he's kind of like just slouched into the seat. Then when he gets up to swear him in, you can briefly see just kind of like how hunched over and like just small he is. And Donald Sutherland is 6'4", y'all. Like, he should be towering over David Oyelowo. And then they only shoot his face during the swearing in, and they never show him standing up. I say all that to say, it just really bummed me out, I think, to see him like that. He's at 88, so I shouldn't expect him to exactly be spry, but you could tell they were trying to hide his physique and his stature in the big clothes and how they shot him. I get that too. You know, he's a legend. He has a reputation to uphold. He himself probably doesn't want the audience to see him looking, I don't want to say weak, but like, you know, just less than he once was. But I get it. But like I said, it bummed me out. But all that to say, that scene was long as fuck for no reason. Like, they do the whole swearing in. Like, we see here the whole thing. And while Judge Parker is saying the words and Bass is repeating them, they like slowly zoom in tighter and tighter, and dramatic music swells. And I just thought, like, if they think they've done the work to make this scene impactful enough to warrant this music and shooting it this way, they haven't. Like, and I'm just sitting there like, yo, this is made to be way deeper than and way more impactful than they've really led up to it being. And there's also a side story that plays out during this scene. Before going into Judge Parker's office, a beat up young black man sits near Bass and he asks him for help. And he tells this brief story that seems to amount to like a misunderstanding or something, or just shitty circumstances that led to him having to kill somebody. I think a flaw in this episode was not being a bit clearer on that, because when we revisit it later, I feel like the magnitude of, like, the show wants us to believe that Sutherland's decision, I'm not gonna call him Sutherland, the Judge Parker's decision to hang this boy was a really shitty one. What he said was a justifiable reason to hang somebody, but the show seems to want me to believe that he's being harsh, and I feel like they did a poor job of really laying out whatever this situation was with this kid, and I watched it twice, so like I don't know, but later Bass drops in on this kid's trial, and we see Judge Parker, like I said, sentence him to death by hanging. Additionally, both in this case and in the case of Billy Crow, Judge Parker is shown to be completely indifferent regarding these brown individuals. And I think that's actually one of the more interesting things the show's done so far. And if I'm being honest, it might be the only interesting thing the show's done so far. And even then, it might not be a thing that they're doing. Like, I might just be looking at that and like, hey, maybe he's being racist toward brown people. But like in that same scene with sentencing the black guy to hang, he sentenced the white guy to hang. And I don't know who that guy was, or why different guys would be sentenced to death for separate murders of the same court. Like, I don't know. There's a whole lot of shit that I feel like they could have been explaining a little bit better. So in the first two episodes, the show only kind of sort of tickled with the idea of how black people would view Bass working for the white man. And I mentioned this is something I want to see a little bit more of. Being a race traitor / sellout is a big deal in the black community. And it's a big deal today, where we don't even have slavery anymore. So you can imagine, it must have been a lot bigger of a deal back then. Now, Bass is taking on this job as deputy marshal to help feed his growing family, 4 kids going on 5. And the white man who gave him the job seems to be indifferent toward the lives of brown people. I don't know about you guys, but I'm wondering if a time's going to come when something happens that turns Bass against Judge Parker. Like if he tries to hang Billy Crow, because Billy Crow did a armed robbery. Didn't nobody die. If he tries to hang Billy Crow, you got to figure, okay, so he just hangs brown people just because. And Billy even mentions this when after he's been captured, he even mentions Judge Parker's reputation for hanging motherfuckers that he has put before him. And now that I've mentioned Billy Crow 17 times, let's talk about his portion of the story in a minute, because I'm not done talking about how boring the first half of this episode was. So after Bass leaves the courthouse, he goes to get his first assignment. We also meet Billy Crow, who, along with a crew led by someone with the badass name Huff Underwood, they rob this family. Paula Malcolmson plays Mabel Underwood, the woman in this crew, and presumably, given the last name, the wife of Huff. Could be sister, I don't know. And she's always great at playing a terrible person. I'm sure I'm going to hate her. I thought she was the absolute worst on Ray Donovan, in a good way as a character. And when Bass picks up his assignment, which just so happens to be for Billy Crow, he meets this guy named Garrett Montgomery. And I swear I thought it was important to learn this guy's name when he was introduced, but so Garrett wants to be part of Bass's posse just to capture Billy, and he only wants $6 to help. And we're then treated to 2 scenes that could have been left on the cutting room floor. We get a scene of Garrett and Bass riding their horses, discussing payment and future partnerships, and then a scene of Bass's wife and daughter playfully splashing water on one another. And you may think that dumbed down 2 important scenes into 2 sentences, but I promise you, that's all that came out of those scenes, and they pissed away several minutes on them. And the worst part about it is when I generally watch a scene that feels pointless, I hesitate to call it pointless because I don't know what the rest of the episode or the movie holds. You know, that shit could matter in 10 minutes for all I know. But not those two scenes. I knew right away they wasted a good 6 minutes out of that 42. I put that shit in my notes right away. Like, didn't need those scenes. And then they go to commercial. You know, how they do with these Taylor Sheridan shows where they like go to black and, you know, like that's where they get an insert a commercial when they aired on CBS. And when it returns, Bass and Garrett have arrived at a hotel with a bar where they plan on trying to ask around to find Billy. And there's a scene here. I wouldn't call it a good scene. It's just a scene. It happens. It exists. Where Bass plays poker with some locals. And if you've never seen a poker game in a saloon before, this was the scene for you. But if you're like everyone else on the planet and you've seen 8 million poker scenes in a saloon, then guess what? You're going to rank this with 7,999,999 because jack shit happened during this scene. They tried to mine some tension out of it. But again, I've seen this scene so many fucking times. Man. Bass wins the game. Like, nothing even happened. Bass wins the game without issue. Like, no one cheats. Like nothing. It's just like, Bass wins. And you... Right before someone starts to call him the N-word for winning fairly, he offers to give the money back in exchange for information on Billy Crow. And then my favorite part of the whole episode happens. He asks for the information. I get him money back in exchange for information on Billy Crow. And then he walks out and Billy Crow's standing right the fuck outside. Like, that was such a terrible decision to make because it immediately made the poker scene feel pointless. And the poker scene was already dumb and boring. And, like, they, like, tried to make it tense and it wasn't. And, like, Billy wasn't there the whole time. And Bass might have still needed the information to find Billy if he wasn't there. I get it. I totally understand. But to have a whole long scene meant to gather information on Billy Crow, only to have him standing right outside the front door afterwards, I mean, man, that felt like an unforced error to me. Like I said, the poker scene tracks. Like, you can do that. It's fine. It makes sense. I don't know, man. Like, and he don't know that that's Billy Crow immediately when he walk outside, but we do, because we saw him already earlier. So, like, even though within the context of the story, it didn't really, it's not wrong per se. Like, they didn't do anything wrong in that sense. I don't think they took into account the way that they ordered the scenes and how that would impact the audience. Because, like I said, I already know who Billy Crow is because they already had the scene where he robs the family. So then they have this whole poker scene where he's like, I'm going to give you back all this money I won in exchange for information on Billy Crow. And then he walk outside and Billy Crow right outside. Man, that shit had me rolling. I did like, though, how when the one guy who lost the game accused Bass of bluffing when he said something like, don't fuck with me or whatever. He said something threatening. And he was like, he's bluffing again. And Bass said, you want to wager on that? I thought that was a cold-ass line. I just want to point out here that we get a third entirely pointless scene in this episode where Arthur and Sally go for a walk and we learn that he's an orphan and that him and Sally apparently have no issues obeying Sally's mother. I don't know why we needed that. If him not having parents matters later, hey, I'll feel free, you guys, to be like, hey, remember when you said that scene of them walking and finding out that Arthur's an orphan didn't matter? Haha! Drop it in the comments when it happens. But so after we spot Billy outside, we draw that scene out too long by having a whole thing where he pretends to not be Billy, and then Garrett and Abby Donovan, Mabel Underwood, they talk shit to one another. Eventually, Billy tries to run and he's captured, and while being taken to Fort Smith to be locked up, we learn that he believes he's going to be killed by Huff Underwood's gang for being captured. They think he's going to snitch, and that Garrett has a gambling problem. And I swear to God, they spent like 10 minutes on the barely interesting information that I just summed up in 2 sentences. And I wrote down in my notes that Garrett had a gambling problem because I'm like, this is going to come around later. We then get treated, obviously I'm using that term loosely, to a gunfight in the dark that was mediocre, difficult to see, and it felt like it had no stakes because we know they're not going to kill the star, and we have no attachment to the two people that we just met 10 minutes ago. So you see what I'm saying when I say this show like doesn't do a lot right? Like, it's not like it's like terrible or it doesn't fucks up a lot. It's just like it's like a whole lot of little things that they could be doing better that would make it better. That was just a really unimpactful gunfight. So Bass takes Billy to Fort Smith and he's locked up, but he also asks Bass how he can be a deputy if he gets free, and then he tells Bass where the money that Huff stole is. And the episode ends with, no, I was about to say the episode ends with Bass's wife giving birth, but we don't actually even get the birthing scene because that would probably be too interesting. We skip over that in favor of learning that Arthur is an orphan. So now, both the audience and Bass have missed the birth of his child, and that's how the episode ends, with him arriving too late to the birth of his child. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not, but next to nothing of interest happened in this episode. No, I'm gonna say it. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna say it. So next to nothing happened in this episode. It was packed to the gills with wasted time and uninteresting scenes, and I'm now starting to wonder if Taylor Sheridan's kind of fizzled out on TV already. Like, so the first half of the current season of Yellowstone is absolutely terrible. Tulsa King was fine, it was mediocre. 1923, it had its moments, but not nearly as good as 1883. Special Ops Lioness, it was solid. Again, just like Tulsa King, but nothing that's going to, make a best of list or anything like that. Just a standard popcorn TV. And now this is off to a bad start, too. And it's starting to lower my excitement for some of the future stuff from Sheridan that's already been announced and that I'm already looking forward to. I'm like, am I going to get now, like, the 4-6's show? Like, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that show. Now I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to be going into that. Like, I'm going to watch it, but, and that sucks, man. But, I don't know. Let me close out with the thoughts that I previewed earlier. So another thing this show is bad at is keeping you up to date with the time and the location. And yeah, sure, they tell you, where you are and whatnot. They tell you. They don't do that, but at least through these first 3 episodes, they've changed time and location frequently and dramatically. Like, not like it's the next day. It'd be like, now it's 10 years later in a different state. Shit like that. You can't have the title card that tells me the date and location in 8-point font at the bottom of the screen for half a second. Like, so many times I've had to rewind it and be like, wait, what did I say? What year is this? Because it's gone before I even notice it. And when you make it that difficult to follow, you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you're also going to be doing stuff like large time jumps and location changes. So, I don't know. Also, is anyone else struggling with the accent that David Oyelowo is doing? Like, he's British, and you can tell he's trying really, really, really hard to do an American 19th century Southern black man accent. And he's trying so hard that it's super noticeable that he's trying. Like the scene with Garrett when, they don't say because, I'm assuming it's Huff Underwood's crew that comes to attack Garrett and Billy Crow and Bass. There's the whole moment where Billy Crow says that he knows where the money is, and then Garrett gets like, okay, we got to go find that. And he's like, I'm not asking, I'm telling. And then he sees Bass start to reach for his gun, and Bass is kind of like looking in the back, and then he gets up and he pulls his gun. Garrett does. He says this whole thing. I did all this shit and I helped you out. I only charged you $3. Are you gonna shoot me? And then Bass is like, no, but they will. And I'm like, what kind of coon ass like? He sounds like how white men imitated black men when they were wearing blackface. Like, that's how bad that sounds, and that's what's bothering me about it. Like, I do not like this voice he's doing. It's like really, really noticeable. And then like the scene at the very end where he goes to Judge Parker after Judge Parker is given the sentence for hanging the two guys. And then Bass meets with him. He tells him about Billy Crow. He's like, you know, I don't think you do that bad. He does confused. I'm like, what kind of shit? Why are you making him talk like this? No, I don't know. Like I said, it's like he learned how to do this accent from like the most racist places you could ever learn a black accent from. But episode 4 has a lot of work to do. I think this show's struggling. I kind of got one foot out the door at this point. If it's 10 episodes and episode 4 doesn't work, I might be out. If it's 6 and episode 4 doesn't work, I'll probably just finish it out. If it's 8, I'll have a lot to think about. So we'll figure that out. I will see you guys next week. And until then, peace.